Come on, 2, 3.
Good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Wednesday, March 16th, 2022. And our top story today, cryptocurrency in your 401k? Not if the Department of Labor has anything to say about it. Joining me now to discuss this and a lot more are David Levine and Kevin Walsh. Both are principals with Groom Law Group, an employee benefits law firm based in Washington, D.C. Gentlemen, great to see you again. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Jeff, thank you so much for having us, and it's good to be here as part of, as we'll call it, your crypto week, knowing you had another guest yesterday that really went to part of this topic.
Yeah, this is a hot topic. Kevin, I want to start with you because we had a recent notice or publication from the Department of Labor's Employee Benefit Security Administration on the inclusion of cryptocurrency in the 401k. What's the breakdown here? What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, so I think that the interesting thing here is that the administration released an executive order on the 9th, which talked about cryptocurrency, the need to regulate, and almost, how America can be a leader in digital currencies. And then you look at, the following day, March 10th, you have the Employee Benefit Security Administration put out a compliance assistance release, which is, it's a website update that is designed to, provide the department's opinion on something. And in it, they largely say that they're very skeptical of the value of cryptocurrency in 401k plans. Whether they're included in a plan investment and a designated investment alternative, so an on-plan option, or even through a brokerage window. So I think it was kind of a shock to plan fiduciaries, the regulated community, and lawyers who watch the space, because we typically aren't used to seeing the Labor Department favoring or putting a thumb on the scale in favor of or against a given asset class. And here, the framework they've laid out would make it pretty tricky for a fiduciary to really go all in on crypto.
Yeah. David, let me come to you. Kevin brings up a really good point, as he always does, I should say, and you do as well. This is kind of unprecedented where the Department of Labor, the EBSA, weighs in on a particular asset class. Does that strike you as kind of new or different or odd or however you want to describe it?
It does, Jeff. I think you can put a lot of hyperbole around this. Crypto certainly gets its share at times. But the reality is the logic in here that's here, it kind of deviates, I'll call it, from what Chief Justice Roberts always talks about calling balls and strikes type of concepts. The Department of Labor has some very, very smart people. There's not even a question in EBSA. I think the credit and acknowledgement should be given there. But at the same time, they are not the sole investment experts. We have a huge community of people about investments. And there's some who may say crypto is a great solution. There are some who may say crypto is not the time yet. But there's a continuum here. And the Department of Labor historically, in different situations, has talked about how you can approach different investments or if there's prohibited transaction issues. But this is moving away from prohibited transactions, and it's moving towards what is prudence. And prudence isn't a black and white that's set out by the Department of Labor. And that type of activity here sets us up for some real challenges. We can talk about the rulemaking rules and everything, because whether this is a website post, a blog post, however you want to call it, the Department of Labor has signaled an intent in what they published to investigate based on this. So it's more than just their opinion. And to sort of wrap that comment up, the Department of Labor at this point wants to stop whether it is the same administration or a future administration from saying, we like active funds or we don't like passive funds or something like that, or international funds. Like take, for example, funds that are in emerging markets that have been affected by the horrible war in Ukraine at this point. You take those scenarios. What's to stop them from saying, well, we're concerned, we think this is bad and this is bad? We often complain about 2020 hindsight in plaintiffs' cases. This is a similar type of discussion that could come up here. And ironically, I would argue the Northwestern versus Hughes case that I know Kevin and I have talked to you a bit about kind of points out it's not about 2020 hindsight. And so I feel like this sets a very bad precedent, especially if the Department of Labor attempts to enforce whether or not they call it guidance. But I know Kevin may have comments, so I'll kick it back to you, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, David. And Kevin, it is a bit of a slippery slope. I guess those are my words, not yours. But before I want to get your comment on what David said, but before, I should have asked you this at the top. My apologies. What's the exposure today in 401k or 401k like plans of cryptocurrency? Is it a huge component of retirement plans? And how do participants and how do plan sponsors access this asset class?
Well, and that's a great question. And, honestly, crypto is not a major component of today's retirement system. But it is an emerging both technology and emerging asset class. And one thing that, we need to be wary of is, if we're trying to get Americans to a secure retirement, we don't want the system to calcify where, the investment options of yesterday won't necessarily be the best investment options for tomorrow. So really today, when we look at it, most plans that provide access to crypto do it through a brokerage window, which is essentially a way for individuals who have, a sense of how they want to invest their assets. And they don't want to be limited to the options that were professionally vetted by the fiduciaries, that they can go and select off menu choices. So I think that's an area where, crypto will likely continue to emerge, but this, I don't want to call it guidance because it didn't go through notice and comment. But this, compliance assistance release could have a chilling effect on, the prudent consideration of this asset class by plan fiduciaries.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, I want to take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll talk more about the impact of this notice and what it means for you as a plan sponsor and perhaps as a participant. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM.
But if you're tired of the same.
Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you stuck with a low credit score? A credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
I'm seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit Repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Welcome back. We're talking this morning to David Levine and Kevin Walsh. Both are principals with Groom Law Group, an employee benefits law firm based in Washington, D.C. Gentlemen, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
Yeah, we're happy. This is a big conversation. We're happy to keep unpacking it.
Yeah, this is a great one. I haven't chased you off yet. David, let me come back to you because we talked, as you mentioned, going to the commercial break about the Hughes case, or maybe that was Kevin to talk about the Hughes case, but you both talked about the Hughes case. We've talked about the considerations for fiduciaries. What's the message here, the takeaway for those fiduciaries, people around the boardroom, the plan sponsors, the consultants in the room, and the record keepers for that matter?
Sure. And I think the takeaway is I think Kevin hit it really well right before the break. This is not formal guidance, but the takeaway is that no matter what, ERISA, let's ignore the DOL saying this is what we think prudence means for the moment because it's not guidance. It's all about the process, and that's what we always talk about with you. And I hate to simplify it so much, but that's what it comes down to. When you pick a designated investment alternative in your plan, you're supposed to pick it, monitor it, evaluate. It's kind of what the Tibble and now the Hughes case talk about. And we've talked about that previously before, so I'm not going to go on and on about that. Similarly, fiduciaries pick other features of the plan. They oftentimes will pick a brokerage window, or they'll have someone else picking the brokerage window, like an intermediary. The key takeaway on that is when you have someone picking, when you pick a brokerage window, there, the Department of Labor, going back sort of in the time machine here, when the Department of Labor has made it clear that a lot of the fee disclosure and process items that you say for designated investment alternatives doesn't, and this is under formal guidance, more formal guidance, the DOL hasn't said, oh, it's the same as a designated investment alternative. But underneath it all, you still need prudence. What are the costs? What are the expenses? How is it structured? It's understanding that. The DOL's post, it basically implies that there's more to it, but again, that gets to the notice and comment. So if you are someone considering implementing crypto, the first question is, how am I implementing? Am I implementing through a designated investment alternative, which DIAs have more process to them, or am I doing it through a window? How am I evaluating? How am I documenting the why it's prudent and why I made the decision? Whether it's because it diversifies your portfolio, whether the up and downside, whether there's other factors. Because the DOL post is very much all about the negative, but there are pros and cons. And if a fiduciary is trying to create a prudent process, it's looking at both and documenting, as I always like to say, the why of why they're doing it contemporaneously. That to me is how you approach it at this point. Innovation always raises questions. We've had this with real estate. Heck, we even had it with target date funds. Doesn't mean crypto will be like a target date fund. I'm not making that leap. But what I am saying is, as new things have developed in our industry, you see changes like that. For early on, I remember having plan sponsors on target date funds say, is this legitimate? Can we do that? And we did all these analysis. Now, I think if you say to someone, is a target date okay? Nobody even blinks an eye. It's assumed it's fine. I think you have to realize it's an evolving landscape, but that's some basics on how I would approach it rather than some hard, like rigid rules, like the release might imply.
Kevin, what does this mean for the regulatory process? You and David intimately involved in the regulation that gets created, but also the legislation and the litigation. I said, so you guys are like the three-tooled team players here. But what does this mean for the regulatory process going forward? It's not guidance in the sense that like we typically receive, but what would this mean going forward for any new regulation? Does it signal anything?
Well, so it does signal that the Labor Department has kind of put folks in a tough spot. If we look at the regulations they've put out, they talk about how a prudent fiduciary acts. They don't subordinate the interests of participants and beneficiaries to their own interests. They put the interest of the participant first. And then the text of the statute is, act with a mind's eye towards the best participant outcomes. And so, as David said, it's all process oriented. And here you've got kind of the Labor Department saying through a website update, essentially, that if you do something, we're probably going to investigate you. And, the proliferation of these kind of website updates is kind of concerning in its own right. But if I look at the ERISA framework that's been articulated in the statute and in the regulations, which is, if you're a fiduciary, you've got to think only about the participants. It's kind of, worrisome than for there to be a non-regulatory thing that says, if you do X, we're going to investigate you. In my mind, it runs the risk that we have fiduciaries with a new conflict, which is, they may think it's prudent to include crypto, but they may be swayed away from, the text of the statute, the text of the regulation, for fear of some of these website updates. I worry that we'll see more website updates in the future because it's a whole lot easier and a whole lot quicker to, tell people that you don't like something and to threaten enforcement than it is to go through the rulemaking process or the legislative process. I know David and I have worked on enough initiatives to know that, even the most non-controversial legislation or regulation can take years. So I don't think I don't think regulating in this manner or sub-regulating in this manner or website updating in this manner is really something that's a positive development.
Yeah. David, I want to get your thoughts on this and we'll close out the segment.
Sure. And Jeff, I think Kevin makes an excellent point. I think I'd use an analogy. At the end of the Trump administration, they put out guidance. They put out proposed regulations in environmental and social governance. We've had the opportunity, thank you, to share it with you and the listeners and people who watch BRN to talk about this in the past. And they basically said in there, we do not believe ESG investments are appropriate in a qualified default investment alternative, almost creating a special rule. That got massive blowback. Who withdrew that? That was withdrawn by the current administration's Department of Labor, EBSA. And basically with the concept that you should have level playing field type of concepts. Now we're getting something that's the exact opposite of that again. We think we've had yo-yos on ESG since the Bill Clinton era. This sets us up for even more yo-yos because if we have a continued proliferation of this soft postings that aren't through notice and comment that are designed to have the regulatory process create a framework, it basically sets us up that one administration can basically flip on a dime and say, this was favored last week, this is favored next week. It can move the markets, it can cause mass upheaval. And I go back to where I began. It turns into the Department of Labor picking winners and losers among investment options and features, which holds the potential to stifle innovation. And also, as Kevin really began with, we're focused. We're supposed to be focused on helping people save for retirement. Is everything that everybody always selects going to turn out well? No, but it's not about hindsight. It's about trying to find innovation and to maximize people's retirement savings. And sort of the continuing breakdown of the formal regulatory process, it sounds wonky, but it can have some really hard side effects that could lead to things like mass trading in and out of plans every time the DOL changes its perspective. That's an extreme view. But the point is, we shouldn't go down the slippery slope, as you said. So that's my takeaway.
Yeah, I think it gives people a lot of pause and think about this. And I think that yo-yo analogy is great. Well, gentlemen, we're going to have to leave it there. Really appreciate you joining us on the program. And look, we look forward to having you back on very soon to share your perspective.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. It's always good to appear on the program.
That wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to? Well, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news and lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more in all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to see our latest shows? Search our content? Well, check out our website. That's www.broadcastretirementnetwork.com. And our streaming partners like Amazon, Roku, Samsung, and over 100 more. We're back again tomorrow. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Waiting here for you to take and drink of. But if you're tired, come on.
Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the first lifestyle and wellness network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.
Are you being audited And do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.